Get ready to blast off in the grim, darkest sandbox you've ever had the luxury of playing. It's time for the 40k RPG Rogue Trader. Wasn't kidding about this being a sandbox. This is the sandiest of sandboxes, because the basic plot is to fly around and explore a cursed region of space and colonize, exploit, and pillage whatever you find. Politically correct, this game is not. When I say luxury, this is the game where you are playing an obscenely rich space noble, complete with your own starship, army, tacit approval from the Imperium of Man to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before, and strip mine everything you come across for profit. The principle of the game is you serve on a rogue trader's starship, and more than likely one of the players is the rogue trader. In the 40k universe, contacts with aliens is forbidden, and exploration and research into new locations and technologies is considered heresy. However, a certain type of noble, obviously enough called the Rogue Trader, is given permission to deal with the filthy Xenos, explore territories outside the Imperium, and bring back lost technologies. Because of these permissions, Rogue Traders are fantastically wealthy with few exceptions. You start the game with a ship and a profit factor. The better the ship you start with, the less your starting profit factor, and vice versa. Ships have a rating called ship points, and transports average around 30 ship points, and grand cruisers around 70 or more. Your starting profit factor is 100 minus the ship points you spent. There's a few exceptions, but those are for in the more advanced rules. This game's campaigns will live and die in session 0. It's a total sandbox, and the possibilities in the game are limitless. If you want to hire a bunch of mercenary armies and go around carving out a mini empire, there's nothing stopping you. If you want to spend your starting wealth on kitting out a fast and stealthy ship and go spying and exploring and selling all of your data to the highest bidder, that's not for everybody, but my campaign had a blast. You can spread religion, go pirating, fight the filthy Xenos, go on treasure hunts, or if you just want to go completely off the rails, actually just trade with people and make money off of that. Find out what your players want before you roll a single die. The campaign you make is going to affect what ship they're going to start with, so if they want to go full-on warmongers, they aren't going to start with a single transport with their one lonely gun. Most games will start with a frigate that's not too expensive but can hold its own in most fights. Cruisers will leave you very little in the way of wealth, and transports can't fight worth a damn. Once the party decides who's the rogue trader, and there are a few other options, but it's standard just to have one rogue trader in the party, the rest of the party fills out the crew. It's a class level system, though not as strict as most games, with the same character mechanics. The rogue trader leads the ship and is heavy on leadership skills, and obviously, the rogue traders are no slouch in combat either. Then you got the arch-militants for the trigger-happy crowd. Seneschals handle all the money aspects of the game. Voidmasters run the ship. Explorators are the tech priests and handle all the repairs and upgrades. Missionaries are priests, which are important to the game because it is set in a theocracy. You got two psychic types, which are the astropath, a blind telepath that serves as the typical 40k style psyker, as well as the ship's radio. And there's a navigator, a three-eyed mutant that is not only accepted in the mutant-hating 40k universe, but heavily rewarded because there's no ways to fly between stars without them. In later expansions, you can play orcs and Kroot, and in one PDF, there's official rules for the Tau. And with one adventure, they give you rules for playing Dark Eldar. Not regular Eldar, Dark Eldar, the ones that are a little too rapey and tortury for most people. Rogue traders in the 40k power base sit comfortably at number 2, only behind the Space Marines of Deathwatch. Compared to the original game of Dark Heresy, where players had to scrounge money to reload their weapons, rogue traders don't even understand the word shortage. Rogue traders start around level 5 compared to the Dark Heresy peons. Your characters in Rogue Trader have the greatest superpower of all, vast wealth. Your characters are starting with weapons that the acolytes of Dark Heresy and the grunts of Only War only dream of. Best quality weapons are the norm for the officers of a Rogue Trader vessel. Every piece of gear you acquire for yourself is almost always the highest quality available, and you can get it whenever you want it. When it comes to outfitting yourself, the question is, can I afford it? The question is, how many can I afford? Mechanically, the game is a percentile-based system, the same system created by Dark Heresy with a few modifications. You roll your basic traits, modify them with a background creation system that is heavily reminiscent of Plinko. Then you get your skills. There's 3 levels of skills. The first one removes the penalty for doing something unskilled with it. The next 2 increase the chance by 10% each. You can also increase your stats up to 4 times each, with each increase raising the stat 5%. You don't level up quickly in Rogue Trader. Your stats will usually end up in the 30 to 50 percentile chance, so you don't succeed on average tasks with any regularity. You do need to get better gear, which is the whole point of the game. The Plinko creation system was a neat concept, but it was a bit stifling because it did remove character options as written. Kept some backgrounds from getting certain roles. The concept was simple enough. You made your selection for your background. Your next option could only be from the 2 to 3 choices beneath it. So if your character came from a Forge world run by the Adeptus Mechanicus, your life options were restricted to a Scrape Garys, a stubjack, or a child of the Creed. You wanted your character to become a scavenger or steal the tech you were working on. That was outside your selection options, so you couldn't do it. Because you only ever had a few options to choose from, and the chart wasn't very large, the two options on the corners could never meet the options at the far corner on the bottom. A rugged survivor from the death world of Catachan could never become a rogue trader without bending the rules, despite the fluff saying anybody could become a rogue trader. The Catachan couldn't even become a mercenary, he was restricted to criminal or scavenger. On the flip side, a noble never had a chance to become an astropath, even though anybody with psychic powers was taken away and assigned their roles in the psychers, bypassing all other options. So once your party is ready and the crew is filled out from the rogue trader all the way down to the rat catcher, it's time to set sail across the void. Because this is a spacefaring game, there's a lot of rules about how ships work. You get to build your ship, which starts off as a basic frame, and you add the parts to it. You get to fill out the basic parts, and the mainline parts fortunately don't cost anything to add. You still want your basic Geller field to keep out demons. That costs power and space, but not ship points. Then you have to add your plasma engine, your warp engine, your sensors, your life support, your power source. Once all of that's taken care of, you get to add weapons and additional ship locations. If you want a garden, it will cost you ship points, but it also raises morale. If you want to add a section to the ship designed to impress filthy Xenos, you get a bonus when negotiating with them, but then the ship's morale takes a hit because the rogue trader tolerates filthy Xenos. Keep in mind, in this game, ship travel is extremely hazardous. If you're going to go to faster than light, you literally take a shortcut through hell. Go watch Event Horizon for an example of how that works. The ship has a force field called a Geller field, which keeps it from being possessed and overrun by demons, where the navigator can actually see through the warp safely, which would drive anybody else insane, and can pilot the ship safely through the warp. In theory, a lot of ships are destroyed because they get lost in the warp, and sometimes the warp will screw with time, so you actually come out weeks later than you were supposed to arrive. On rare occasions, you can actually arrive before you left. Then you get to the fun part of adding guns. Every ship has a certain number of weapons it can fit in its hull, as well as set directions and size restrictions. You aren't going to fit a micro cannon broadside onto a destroyer escort. A lowly transport gets a single gun mounted on its topside, where a grand cruiser is bristling with every weapon you can imagine. There's a lot of trade-off in the weapons. Energy weapons deal a lot more damage, but cost a lot more power. Laser weapons have a further range than plasma weapons, but plasma inflicts enormous damage to compensate. There's a lot of factors to consider when arming your ship. Range, power consumption, and total damage and space all factor into what's the best gun for you. If your ship allows it, you're going to want to vary your guns, because the first thing you have to do to damage an enemy ship is to lower its shields. The shields stop the first hit a turn for most ships. Certain ships have multiple shields and can ignore more hits. So a single macro cannon shot drops a shield exactly as a lance battery shot. Wasting highly damaging lance shots on shields is a good way to lose a fight. You want to use your smaller guns to disable the ships and hammer them with the big ones. In the basic book, you pound on each other until someone is dead in space or enough losses among the crew are inflicted so the ship breaks and runs. Expansion books add attack craft and torpedoes to increase the tactics available to the ship, so instead of just parking across from each other and slugging it out, now giant vortex missiles that will snap a ship in half in a single hit will encourage you to move around in space as not to die. Certain crew actions give some variety in combat, from damage control to concentrated fire to increased movement, so there's always something for everybody when trying not to get vaporized by plasma bolts the size of Bane blades. Rogue Trader is easily my favorite of the 40k RPGs. It's the only one of the additions of the setting where you actually have a degree of freedom. Dark Heresy, you're working for the Inquisitor, who assigned you your missions. Death Watch has given you missions from the command structure. Black Crusade, you're a pawn of the Dark Powers. Only War, you're a trooper in the massive cog of the Imperial Guard. In Rogue Trader, you get to decide where you go. You get to decide how to make your fortune and equip your ship. You are very much in control of the campaign. With the vast wealth available to your characters, you can be anything you could possibly want. You've got the best quality fighter craft, power armor built specifically for you, a massive array of weapons that will rip apart just about any enemy to shreds, either from a distance or close up. But the game is not a cakewalk. You are still a squishy human. Hit points are few in this game. They act more like a blade of armor. Nothing bad happens as long as your hit points are in the positive. Once you hit 0, things get rapidly worse. You will get blinded, lose limbs, have your face melted off before dying horribly in a graphic fashion. You can take a few hits from most basic ranged and melee weapons. The heavy weapons will turn you into so much of a smear they'll bury you in a shot glass. Weapons like the las cannon do so much damage, you're automatically dead just from the base damage. Then you roll 5d10 more damage to rub it in. Of course, then there's the multi-melta, my favorite, which vaporizes any armor you're wearing and then kills you, then rolls for damage. And because it's a friendly weapon, it also melts everyone standing around you. I love the multi-melta. It doesn't have the range of the las cannon, but at least you're guaranteed to see the look on their faces before you vaporize them. Rogue Trader has a plethora of enemies. You can build an entire campaign around just a single foe. There's Chaos Cultists, Orcs, Eldar, Dark Eldar, Kroot, rival Rogue Traders, the Rakghoul, and the Yuvoth, which are custom aliens created for this game. Even though the Yuvoth are still technically extinct, their machines keep going and keep killing people. So yeah, those guys are great. All of which can kill you in horrible ways. There's just a huge variety of subtypes and the different types of enemies. If you want to hunt orcs, you can spend the whole campaign gunning down boys and working your way up to the war bosses. If you want to fight something far more dangerous than any filthy Xenos, fight for territory with the Rogue Traders. Rakghoul will try to destroy everything you hold dear, but at least they won't pretend to like you first. Large part of the game was a scavenger hunt for ship parts because of the archetype components. You can build a massive fleet of ships or just one really awesome ship as you adventure. And by adventure I mean storm rival ships and take them by force. There's a lot of ways to get new ships depending on your playstyle. If your profit factor is high enough, you can just purchase the smaller class of ships to grab up transports and escorts. If you're strong enough, you can salvage ships that you defeat in combat. For the exploring types, there's a lot of lost ships you claim in the Expanse of the Void. If you can't salvage the entire ship, you can at least grab parts of it. There's an ancient tech called archetypes, which is far superior than current technology. In the 40k universe, there was a time where technology was just better than the current science. That was called the Dark Age of Technology. Normally, archetypes is claimed by the Adeptus Mechanicus when it's discovered, but thanks to you being a rogue trader, the rule of dibs reigns supreme in 40k. So if you come across an old wrecked ship that is an archetype engine, feel free to rip it out of the ship, then haul it back to your shipyard and install it in your ship. Suddenly you've got more power and space available, so you can add even more cool stuff like that Astrodome-sized shoe closet you've always wanted. Now for the downside. This game requires the players to show initiative. This is not a game that does railroading very well because you've got literally an army at your disposal and you can always pack up and leave on your city-leveling giant war machine currently in orbit above you. You have thousands of people under your command, or tens of thousands on the larger ships. There's some hand-waved laws explaining why the rogue trader has to be the part of the first boarding team to claim something, or others will just take it from you. Again, I cannot stress enough how important the law of dibs is to the Imperium of Man. Alright, so you can set up an entire adventure for your party, but you're going to have to make it fit what the party wants. A party with a Grand Cruiser is about as subtle as Exterminatus, that's not going to go for a stealth exploration game. Throwing a crew with a scout sloop into an extended land battle is a good way for them to lose interest in the game. The game doesn't do written adventures very well unless you dangle a lot of opportunity right in front of them. If you dangle too much opportunity, they're going to go off the rails. Greed isn't good in Rogue Trader, greed is king. If you give them enough of a prize, they will chase it, but they will chase it in different ways. If your players don't like sandbox games, they will hate Rogue Trader. It requires a lot of room to work with, but if they don't know what to do, they aren't going to have a good time. On a side note, seriously, who in Fantasy Flight games thought the players were just going to let that battleship get away in the first adventure book that they wrote? I mean, seriously, you walk in, you get to the mad captain, he says he wants to send his battleship off into the void and save the crew and let them die like actual voidfarers, and you're talking to a rogue trader who is already pricing out the different parts of the battleship. No, that's not going to happen. I've run that adventure for 5 different crews, and every one of the crews shot the captain and kept the battleship. Come on, guys. If you want to get Rogue Trader, get ready to shell out some cash. It was never a cheap game to begin with, and when Fantasy Flight lost the 40k license, the vultures took over. It's not uncommon to find the core book for over $100. Most of the supplements range north of triple digits as well. You can find the adventures easily enough. They weren't very good to begin with the exception of Frozen Reaches. I liked that one. If you want Battlefleet Coronis, Into the Storm, or Faith and Corn, you're going to be spending some serious cash unless you're patient enough on eBay or the Facebook auctions to catch one for a decent price. The sad thing is most of the expansions add to the game exponentially. You're going to want them. Battlefleet Coronis gives you a ton of options you can build your fleet with. Into the Storm gives you so many options it's almost mandatory. The Navis Primer completes the Astropath and Navigator classes. Grab the whole set if you can, but watch the prices, because if you just buy them for what they're wanting, you're going to be spending $1,000 for not many books. And it's not a very large print run of books, fortunately, so you don't have to buy many of them. Rogue Trader was showing cracks when the line ended. The original system hadn't aged well with the strict class limits on skills and talent. Black Crusade, Only War, and Dark Heresy 2nd Edition had switched to a new system which was much less restrictive and open. Now, the more in common you had with a category of an advancement, the cheaper it became for you. This would have probably breathed a lot more life into Rogue Trader. Sadly, the game died with the rest of the 40k world when the license got yanked. There was 2 books in the works, a Tau source book and an adventure involving the Tau. These were full-size books in color that never made it to print. They did make them free to download, so snatch them up as soon as you finish watching this. I'll see if I can link the straight link to the books. No kidding, they're fantastic, and you can use the Tau book for only War or Death Watch if you want to play a Tau in those lines. So that's it for Rogue Trader. It was one of the most open games you'll ever see. You decide how you're going to play it, how you're going to go plunder, colonize, and wage war to improve your finances. The more books you add to the game, the more dangerous it becomes, because the more rolls you make, the more chances you're going to fail, and failing in this game usually has serious penalties. If you like to read about 40k, some of the fluff books are fantastic reads. Unfortunately, the secondary market has made this a very difficult game to find. So next time I'm going to talk about Aeon Trinity, the game about psychics in space! This was written by White Wolf. This was their chance to break away from the world of darkness, and unfortunately left us on a cliffhanger ending. So until next time, oi, do you mind? I'm sneaking here!